Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes of Israel scattered abroad and believers in Yeshua Messiah. Good evening to you, everybody. Welcome to Living Manna. I'm Pastor Dave Satan, Senior Shepherd here at Living Manna. It's Friday night, which means it's time for Hidden Manna. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this Friday night. Of course, you're not just hanging out with me. You're also hanging out with my dear brother, Max. Let me pop the screen up here. Hey, bro, how's it going?
Hey, Shabbat Shalom. How's it going, buddy?
Good. Beautiful night here. Beautiful day. Spring is in the air. Loving it.
Loving it. I know it's the part of my life I could not wait for Josiah to hit. He's playing Little League.
Oh,
playing
wow,
T-ball.
That's great. Oh,
so we had some practice today. Yeah. Love this time of the year.
Of course. The only thing I do not is the allergies.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Oh, my God. And plus, all the work we're getting done in the house here, dust everywhere. So allergies have been sort of an issue for everybody here in the house. But
we haven't had that big pollen hit where your car turns yellow.
Yeah, it'll come.
Goodness, right? Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming for sure. But it's good to see you. Good to have you folks that are joining us. I see a couple of you guys on there. Let's go through just some of the
some shout outs.
Little bit of commercials here. If this is the first time you're hanging out with us, or if it's not the first time you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We'd appreciate that. If you enjoy the conversation, give us a thumbs up. Make sure you send it out to somebody. You can share it with somebody. Let them know about what we do here. This, of course, is not the only thing that we do. We've got our weekend message tomorrow. On Saturday, we have at 10:45 our normal service, and we invite you to be part of that. We've been going through, or we started last week, the Matthew 13, talking about some of the parables. We're going to go back to the parable of the sower and the seed tomorrow, but we're gonna look at it from a very, very different perspective than we ever have before. Of course, we've got our Wednesday night Bible studies. That was kind of interesting this past Wednesday. Looking into John. Isn't it amazing? What like we say all the time, you just not only do you not know what you don't know, but it could be right in front of you, and you don't
all these years,
and you don't see it. Right? What's that old saying? If it was a snake, it would have jumped up. It would have jumped up and bit you. And how many times did we read the Gospel of John, chapter 1, all the way through? I can't even tell you how many times in the last 15 years I've read the Gospel of John. Dozens of times. And then all of a sudden it just jumps right off at the page, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, he's the prophet like Moses."
Yep.
The whole thing is that he's the prophet. It really is amazing.
That was a good study.
We just never stop learning. We just this is if once you think you got the whole thing down pat, you got to be humble, because you realize you don't. You don't.
Nope, not even close, right?
Not even close. But it's a wonderful journey, though.
Well, to give a shout out to Pam, Chris, and Tootie.
Yes.
Saying Shabbat Shalom to everybody.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it very, very much. And I know your sister-in-law has been hanging out with us. I don't know if she's on tonight, but Michelle.
Yep, Michelle and Scott.
Good shout out to you guys.
I feel like we're on what's that? Romper Room with the mirror.
Romper Room with the mirror.
Remember that?
When I was a kid, I couldn't wait for them to say David, and they never said David.
Oh,
right? Whatever your
Maximo.
name was. But you know what? We also do the same thing, because I remember the 700 Club. What was the guy's name again?
Oh,
oh my goodness, Robertson. Pat was it Pat Robertson? Robertson. Yep. And there comes a part in the show when they, I guess from their perspective, they're giving words of prophecy, or I see somebody with a broken leg, and I remember it almost reminded me of like watching Romper Room, you know, because people are watching the screen waiting to hear their ailment.
It's true.
And hoping that
unless their name connected with the body part, it wasn't,
well, they didn't call it names. Not on the 700 Club. I don't remember them calling out names, but I do, remember them. And I remember, because I was just way before we understood what we understand now. And you almost in anticipation or watching.
Yeah.
And waiting. Oh man, I hope he says something about somebody with a bad back, because if he says that, I know he's talking about
me. Exactly.
Right? And yet,
and we were both fighting for that same word.
I know. No, it's my word. No, it's my word. It's my word.
But isn't that crazy? I mean, how many body parts? You got to be right every day. there's someone out there, especially with their clientele is most of people over 50.
Well, I mean,
Someone with a bad knee.
hey, what's up with people over 50?
I joined the club this year.
Don't be
It's
an
good.
ageist.
It's good.
But it was kind of sad if you really think about it. It's sad because we were watching those things and listening to all. And I mean, come on, if you say I see somebody with an ulcer, and you're having trouble with the esophageal spasms. I mean, come on, how many people fall into that category?
Yeah.
And yet we thought that was it, right? We thought that's how Abba does things. Of course, we know better now.
Yep.
But and it's I'm not trying to shame or beat up people that may still have that concept, but we gotta realize this is much bigger, much bigger, much bigger. But listen, you just don't know what you don't know until you know it, and then you do, and then we're responsible for it. So for tonight, guys, we wanted to have a conversation about the resurrection. I think the title for tonight is Why the Resurrection? Yeah, why the resurrection? Obviously, we're in the season of Passover, the season of unleavened bread, the season of first fruits. Those should be things that are all fresh on our minds. And obviously with first fruits we're not just thinking about the death at Passover, but we're thinking about the resurrection. That is the pivotal event in all of human history, I guess. And it's kind of, even from a secular point of view, and by secular I mean the Roman sort of church calendar point of view, because obviously Rome's the one that the calendar we follow today is the calendar of Rome, which is important to another message for another time. But that's the calendar that we follow. And even today in the modern way of dating, we date, or we used to anyway, we used to date everything from BC to AD. I think today it's BCE to CE.
CE.
Is that what it is? CE? Because they want to get any concept or idea about Messiah out of it. But even that, if that has been the way we've looked at the calendar for a long time, all peoples all over the world, even today, still all people all over the world use that calendar, use that dating. It doesn't matter if you're in China, you're still using that dating system. Yes, the Chinese have their own calendar too, but they follow the Julian calendar.
Yep.
They do. The whole world does. It's the business calendar. It's every country on the world follows this, no matter where you are.
Economic,
Israel,
market, everything.
it's the economic calendar. The whole all finance is done on that calendar. And how is it split up? What is the one pivotal thing that we say? We say the year zero divides all that came before and then all that came after. But really, BC means, or it was supposed to mean before Christos, before Christ. And AD, Anadonai, the year of the Lord. And the event that was smack dab right in the middle of that divides the two halves, is the death and the resurrection.
That's right.
Because without the resurrection, the death doesn't mean anything. It would be the death of another martyr, of another person, of another prophet. No different than Isaiah or eventually Jeremiah, or
even the scripture says King David. Yep.
King
He didn't
David.
ascend. Yeah.
Great men, great prophets, but the resurrection changes everything. It is the pivotal event. And so, the question we kind of want to deal with today, or maybe, and it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible for us to go through every aspect as to why the resurrection, because there's a lot of reasons for the resurrection, right? There's a lot of parts, there's a lot of moving parts to it. So it's impossible for us to really sort of touch everything. We're going to try to hit some of the highlights. But this was an issue even in the first century, and it still is in Judaism today. But it was an issue in the first century. We read in the Gospels, the Gospel accounts where they're testing the master. Excuse me. Sorry about that. They're testing the master prior to the crucifixion, right? And you've got what's the greatest commandment, tells him what the greatest commandment is. And then one of the questions they pose to him, and it's the Sadducees that do this. And I know most of us probably understand this. There's a difference between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Pharisees were, and there was even multiple sects of Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
They would eventually, Pharisaic Judaism would eventually overtake Judaism, because once Sadduceic Judaism, which is connected to the temple, dies, when the priesthood dies, the rabbis eventually take over. And so today is sort of a I wouldn't say it's actually Pharisaic Judaism, but it is the progenitor of Pharisaic Judaism, the rabbis and all the, and so the Pharisaic Judaism and Messiah's day do believe that there is a resurrection, where of course Sadduceic Judaism of its day doesn't believe in a resurrection. They didn't believe in the spirit world. They didn't believe in demons. They didn't believe in an afterlife, and so of course they test the master, and it's a crazy test. It really is, because they're using the Torah.
Yep.
If there's a lady who's got a husband, the husband dies,
Married
she has
7
no
times,
children,
right?
and she gets married over and over and over. Whose husband is she in the resurrection? And I love Messiah's answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
You do err, not knowing the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
Bam.
Yep.
Just a bam.
Mm-hmm.
You guys got, let's paraphrase that. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Read your Bible.
Yep.
Read your Bible. And of course, he says, that he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but he's the God of the living.
Yep.
So then you think about what he's saying. You say, wait, if he's the God of the living, then he's saying that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are not gone. Obviously, they're gone. They're dead. Their bodies have decayed. But who they are is alive. They are somewhere. And Abba is the God of the living. And so this was an issue, this idea, this conflict between whether you do believe in the resurrection or you don't believe in the resurrection. It was early on. It was there in the first century. I think in Saul's trial, he also kind of brings up that that fact when he's arrested. I forgot what chapter it is. I don't know. It's like chapter 22, 21, 22, something like that. Yeah. Where he's arrested at Jerusalem and he's brought before the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin is made up of Sadducees and Pharisees. And of course, they're at odds with each other. And Saul, being a really smart guy, realizes, I need these people on my side. Mm-hmm. And he tells them, I am here for the defense of the resurrection. So more automatically, you've got all the Pharisees that would stand up and say, well, hey, we're here for the defense of the resurrection too, where the Sadducees will say, no, we don't believe that. And of course, he sort of divides the council, which, is to his benefit. And he explicitly says, I am a Pharisee. Saul, I am a Pharisee, born of a Pharisee. And of course, the issue is resurrection.
Yep.
The most important event in all of history, in all of human. Now, if you go, just from a historical perspective and you do research, there's lots of other religions that have a quasi resurrection. Their God dies and comes back to life, or a man dies and he comes back to life. It happens over and over. I think there's like 16. I remember, I forgot where I saw this or I read this, about 16 other quote unquote messiahs in pagan religions that were there way before Messiah comes, way before the Messiah of Israel comes. And they have similar stories. And you say, well, what, how could that be? And to me, it seems the easiest answer is that the enemy knows exactly what the story is.
Oh yeah.
He knows exactly what's coming and has done everything he could to muddy the waters. To make it seem, and I think that was part of the problem as early the people of the way, as the Gentiles start coming in, the Gentiles already had concepts of resurrection and concepts of Messiah in their head, but they were pagan concepts of Messiah.
Yep.
Or maybe Messiah is not the right word to say, because Messiah means anointed king of Israel, but they were concepts of of pagan deities, both men and deities, that died on behalf of their people and then rose however many days from the dead later. Tammuz, 40 days later. Easter, the whole Easter story. So it was already there. And I think this is kind of where the people of the way kind of go wonky by the 2nd, 3rd, 4th century. And by the time Rome comes on the scene, they just throw a monkey wrench in the whole story, and they make it about it's a mixture of the pagan concepts of an anointed one who dies and rises, and they mixed it with the Hebrew. Matter of fact, what they did is they removed all the Hebrew concepts of the Messiah, and they exchanged them for these pagan concepts. Yeah. And of course, here we are today.
I mean, just to prove your point, if we go back to Babel, right, and we see what Middle Eastern to Asian cultures still have that same story from their gods, right? They were taught this lie, right, of a false resurrection through their deity that they believed in, all stemmed from that, you know? And they took it to when they were scattered, they took it to all their cultures and taught false,
It's the story of the Tower of Babel. It's the story of Egypt, Osiris, and Isis and Horus. It's a similar story, close enough that when you know, and for people that know history, you know, people that want nothing to do with God but have an understanding of history, I've seen a lot of people use those very concepts and say, well, I can't believe in the Messiah of the Bible because this story's been told already.
Yeah.
It's been told this many times. And if we're mixing those elements with this story, it's almost indistinguishable. But it is distinguishable if you understand the Hebrew aspect of it.
Yeah.
The biblical.
I saw a testimony from an American Indian who did a song with Joshua Aaron. He's a Messianic singer. And in his testimony, he said that he gave up on Christianity, it was through, it was done, went into the military, and he was at a military base, and the tribal leader was speaking, and he told them about their ancestors, and he talked about a great tower that was built, and this was from American Indian ancestry that they would teach their tribes, and he realized, whoa, this is the Tower of Babel. So he actually saw it, and this is what brought him back to seeking truth, and now he's walking in truth. This is it's on YouTube somewhere, but it was really interesting to see. It was really cool, and they said that the name of the god was Yahweh. That's how they would say it in wow. That Indian. Isn't that crazy?
That's so cool.
Yeah,
I think, and I've heard sort of different versions of it, but I think the correct pronunciation would be Yahuwah, even though I wound up saying Yahweh myself all the time. Because if you just sound out the vowels, that's exactly what it sounds like. But then you got to go back to what the Paleo Hebrew is, and and what those sounds are. So whether it's Yahuwah or Yahuwah, that's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah,
that's pretty. That's definitely pretty cool stuff. All right, so let's talk about the place. It's obviously the most important event in all of human history, the resurrection. It is the foundation for everything. Because again, without the resurrection, then Messiah is just another guy who died on a cross, who was killed by the Romans. And how many of them were killed by the Romans? How many people were killed by the Romans on a cross?
Yep.
If not hundreds of thousands, if not a million people, So without the resurrection, the story is not significant. It may be interesting. He may be just, another Jewish rabbi falling victim to Rome, but it doesn't distinguish him in any way. However, the resurrection, and I know we've probably seen these things. I know we've probably all seen them before. We've read things and seen videos and stuff. Rome, all Rome had to do, or even the priests, all they had to do to squash this whole thing in the beginning is produce a body.
Yeah.
Right? Just produce a body.
It's true.
Just drag his body out and say, no, here, look, here's your Messiah. You said he rose, and there's the corpse. You say, well, why didn't they do that? And of course, we read in the accounts that they said, what is it? The priest asked for a guard. Right? A Roman guard.
Yeah, they're afraid disciples were going to come back. Yeah.
So you're telling me a couple of fishermen beat up beat up a Roman guard,
Mm-hmm.
scared the Roman guard away. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys are
And yeah, and a Roman
warriors.
guard isn't one guy. It's like how we would say
Yeah, we'd say like
a
a platoon.
platoon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's you're not talking about two guys in skirts with a spear in their hand.
Mm-hmm.
These are hardened Roman soldiers,
Like a
especially
Navy SEAL, I guess that we can imagine, right?
especially if they're stationed in Judea,
Mm.
in that area of the world. That's not cake. The cushy job would have been a Roman soldier, in Rome
In Rome, yeah. Yeah.
or Athens or at Smyrna somewhere. But if you were a Roman soldier in Judea, man, you were fighting all the time. The Jews were
Mm-hmm.
uprising all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you were not new to battle or to death, right? And yet they couldn't produce a body,
Yep.
and that's all they had to do. That's all they had to do was just drag out a body. So there's that, and of course when you just go through all the testimony of the gospel accounts, I mean I think it's Saul himself that says that there were over 500 people
That actually saw him. Yeah.
after the resurrection, during the counting of the Omer, after the resurrection that see him and that attest to it. And of course, I think to me one of the most wonderful or powerful parts of that story, at least for me, is that the death that these men suffer for what?
Yeah. If it was a lie.
If
Yeah.
if it was a lie, if I'm lying about the whole thing, and somebody's holding a knife to my throat, or I don't know if this is true or not. I don't recall, but I think it was Thomas that was ripped apart by horses, 4 different directions, or one of them.
Mm.
Man, they're tying me up to a horse, man. I'm confessing.
Yeah. Especially if it's yeah. Yeah.
I'm spilling the beans, man. In fact, you don't even have to do that. I'll spill the beans.
Mhm.
No, I made it up. Sorry, I lied. Fine, throw me in jail. Just don't kill me.
Yep.
And yet these guys are willing to go to their grave for
Peter,
the resurrection.
Yeah. Yep.
What is it? Peter is hung upside down, I think.
Yeah. What did they say that he said they say that it's because he didn't find himself worthy enough, right, to be hung like Messiah, so they hung him upside down.
Wow. I mean, if that's true, we gotta look at the source here. But if that's true, that's crazy. I mean, listen, it was bad enough to be hung right side up on a Roman cross. Could you imagine the
That's how you
agony?
died from the suffocation. From your chest just you couldn't breathe. So can you imagine how much worse?
No,
You said upside down.
the agony of dying like that. So either these guys were just off their rocker, nuts, and they all just made this crazy pact to death, or something absolutely incredible happened. And of course, I fall on the side of absolutely incredible happen. That is pivotal to who we are. So one of the things that I've heard, and we could speak to this, is because the conflict of whether there's a resurrection or not was not just in the first century among the Jews. It's still here today. Even modern Judaism today, and it's kind of weird because modern Judaism is very much like modern Christianity, in that you've got many different names, many different denominations, many different sects, from your Orthodox to your liberal to your conservative. I mean, there's many different groups, and they're some of their beliefs are different from group to group. But in general, when it comes to the concept of like afterlife or resurrection, Judaism as I guess you could say as a whole today, or in general today, obviously rejects the idea of the Messiah, the one we call Yeshua, dying and on the cross, and then on the Roman stake, the tree, and then 3 days after rising from the dead. That's obvious, right? But they do believe in Sheol. How can you not believe in Sheol? It's everywhere. Yeah. It's all over the Torah. And they believe in it sort of like an afterlife or or an underworld, I guess you could say. Um, one of the
Almost like I'm asking,
no,
like
go ahead.
Abraham's bosom type
Yeah,
situation,
yeah, I
or
guess like an Abraham's bosom thing. It's an afterlife, but it's not a belief in sorry, it's not a belief in resurrection the way you and I would, or at least
mm,
not that idea of it. But an afterlife, like so at the end of this there is something. And again, I'm not an expert on all the Jewish beliefs. It's just some of the stuff I looked
mhm.
up and read.
No, it's crazy about that story. What is at the end? What does Abraham say? That even if a man rose from the dead, they still wouldn't believe. And right there, right,
Well,
talking about right.
like all the parables, they're not just because the master tells a parable with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy who wore purple. He's rich,
Yep.
and then of course there's Lazarus. He's sick,
Eliezer. Yeah.
or Eliezer. He's sick. He doesn't have anything. He's sitting in front of the rich man's house. Can't eat bread from his table. Won't even give him the crumbs from his table.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got 5 other brothers
Yep.
that he tells him to go back for when he dies. Lazarus is obviously in Abraham's bosom. The rich man is not. The parables are not just like little stories to tell you a spiritual truth, though they do contain obviously spiritual truth,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the way sort of religion paints it, right? Because you've got parables in the Hindu religion, you've got parables and stories in the Islamic religion,
Oh
and
yeah.
they're all like little stories to get a
Yep.
concept across
Asians
to
do
you.
that big time, right? A lot of the Asian
A lot of the
religions.
Asian
Yeah.
religions, yeah, they have some sort of story, a
Mhm.
parable, some sort of moral or ethical teaching,
Fortune cookies.
and we and we lower, and I guess modern religion lowers the parables the master talks about to
Mm-hmm.
that level, but
Yeah.
that's not what the parables are.
Exactly.
The parables, yes, they contain a spiritual lesson in them, but most of the parables, at least I'd say a vast majority of them, are are is a way of him telling them what's going on right in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
what's gone on historically,
Yep.
and what's going on right in front of them. But then they're also prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
He's also prophesying to them, and he's telling them what's going to happen. And even in that story of Lazarus, of this idea of that they're not, even if someone rose from the dead, you're not going to believe. And then what does he tell them? You got Moses, you got the
Yeah.
Torah.
Believe me. Yeah.
Believe that, and if they believe that, then they're not going to wind up in the position you're in. But the only people in Jerusalem that wore purple and were rich was the high priest.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only Jew that would wear purple, and he'd wear purple
Yep.
because he was the high priest.
Mm-hmm.
And the table he ate from was the altar. He
Mm-hmm.
ate the meat, the
Mhm.
meat that people brought in. So what he's actually telling them is that he's actually, and I don't know if they got it or not, but
A
Messiah is
couple of times
actually,
they did.
yeah,
That's when they wanted to kill him.
yeah, Messiah's calling him out.
Yeah.
He's calling him out. He's saying, no, the rich man that I'm talking about is Caiaphas, or really Annas. Annas is the rich man, and Annas wouldn't let somebody who was a beggar like that into the temple to bring an offering, to be able to eat of the meat that came to the table. He wouldn't even been able to have the crumbs that fell off of the altar, to eat. And then they die, right? They both die. And then he's got 5 other brothers. Well, what's crazy, if you go through history after that, there are 5 other high priests
Mm-hmm.
after Annas, Caiaphas, and his 4 sons, until the temple is destroyed. Messiah was talking about those guys
Yeah.
in the future. None of them. They're all going to wind up just like their father or grandfather or whatever it was
Mm-hmm.
that wound up in that position. So a parable is not just, we can't lower it to this idea of just a spiritual little lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So is he talking about resurrection? Yeah. But he's also prophesying to them, man.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
telling them,
big time.
what's going to happen over the next 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
How hard your hearts are, that you're not going to believe Moses. So if he tells them to believe in Moses, then in Moses must be resurrection.
Yep. Yep.
There's got to be.
Excuse me.
If they're not going to believe one who rose from the dead, but they have to believe Moses, and obviously one does rise from. Actually, Lazarus, the other Eliezer, does rise from the dead. which should be a miracle in and of itself to make people believe. But that's not really a resurrection.
No, he had to die still.
Yeah, because the idea of resurrection is you're not the same. You're the same person, I guess you could say, but you're not the same.
You're still in the corruptible.
You're incorruptible
form, yeah.
Which is definitely
Romans.
Not Romans, 1 Corinthians 15, and we'll talk about that. So yeah, pivotal, absolutely pivotal. And there's multiple lessons. So it's got to be in the Torah. So the question is resurrection taught in the Torah? Yes, absolutely it is. If you have eyes to see it and ears to hear it. And I think well, go ahead. I know we talked about a couple of these. Give us, from your perspective, where is resurrection in the Torah?
Well, speaking of Yeshua, we got 2 Samuel, right? Chapter 7.
All right, let me get there. Yeah, this is an obscure one. You got to think about for a second, but when you think about it, it absolutely makes sense. This is 2 Samuel, chapter 7, starting around verse 12. Let me get there, and then I'll pop it up on the screen for everybody, because you got to really give this one some thought.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to just pop off the.
Yeah. When you read it, it doesn't scream resurrection to you. But when you start to think this thing through, you got to say, wait a minute, how is this even possible? The only way this is possible is resurrection. But where are we? First, 2 Samuel, chapter 7, verse 12. You want me to read it?
Yeah, I don't have a.
All right. Go to verse what, 16?
12 to 16, yeah.
It says, when your days are filled and you rest with your fathers, excuse me, all this dust. When your days are filled and you rest with your fathers, I shall raise up your seed after you, who comes from your inward parts, and shall establish his reign. He does build a house for my name, and I shall establish the throne of his reign forever. I am to be his father, and he is my son. If he does perversely, I shall reprove him with the rod of men and with the blows of the sons of men. But my loving commitment does not turn aside from him, as I turned it aside from Shaul, whom I removed from before you. And your house and your reign are to be steadfast forever before you. Your throne is established forever. All right, so let's take this apart for a second. All right, so this is obviously Abba speaking to King David. David's about to die, and he promises him a son who is going to build a house, who is going to come from him. It's going to be someone genetically connected to him, a man connected to him, who is going to build a house and whose throne is going to last forever. So just on a purely like carnal, basic, look at the text and let's just take the plain meaning, the 101, the surface meaning from the text. You read this and you think he's talking about who? Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
and he is, right? I mean he is talking about Solomon, but he's not talking about Solomon. He's not talking about Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say Solomon would be is an earthly shadow of what's about to come. Because what does Solomon do? Solomon comes, and David is not allowed to build a temple, but he gets all
man
the
of
stuff.
war.
He's a man of war. He gets all the stuff for it. Solomon does, right? Solomon builds the temple. I'm sorry. Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
I got something that keeps going in my throat too over here, bud.
The dust is going through the camera here. So Solomon builds the temple. But I mean, Solomon, great man, wonderful wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously he's got some
issues,
major flaws.
Yeah.
So the question you got to ask yourself was David's throne established forever? Because that's what it says.
That's the key word. Yeah.
Let me put this up one more time. Verse 16, and your house and your reign are to be steadfast forever before you. Your throne is established forever. Well, when you read the story of Saul, Saul. When you read the story of Shlomo,
I love that.
Shlomo. Karen says all the time. What does she say? Schlep. She uses that word schlep. It just has that schlep, that thing. It's fun to say. Shlomo. But does Shlomo's throne last forever? It doesn't. It doesn't even. It almost doesn't outlast his own reign. Right? Because right after him, the whole kingdom is divided into two kingdoms. Yep. The northern house, Jeroboam, and so I mean,
they sound similar.
Rehoboam and Jeroboam. So is Solomon the fulfillment of this? Well, in a type, in a shadow, I would say
good point.
I would say it's prophetic, right? It's a little picture, it's a little window, but like all other prophetic shadows, it's a shadow. It's not the whole thing.
But we're still missing that word forever.
And Solomon's reign was not forever, and even after him, like we said, the two kingdoms are divided. Eventually, the northern kingdom falls to Assyria. The southern kingdom has some horrific kings that come up in it. A couple of good ones, but some horrific kings. Eventually, that gets destroyed, reestablished, destroyed, and then the people who are sitting on the throne, whether it's the Maccabees, whether it's the Hasmoneans, the Persians,
they're all out of order anyway.
Whether it's the Herods, they should not be sitting on the throne. They should not be priests. They should not be running the temple. They should not be doing any of that. And certainly their thrones were not forever either. So what is this prophecy really about? Or better yet, how can this prophecy really be established? The only way is through resurrection.
That's right.
Because the son he's talking about is not Solomon. He's talking about Messiah. He's talking about the Messiah. Because, I mean, what's one of the first things we hear? I'm so sorry. So what's one of the first things that we hear Messiah say in the Gospel of John? Like right in chapter 2 when he goes to the first Passover. And he's there and he's knocking over the tables and the chairs. And you made my father's house a den of thieves, right? And what is it? Destroy this temple, and I will build it in 3 days. What's Messiah building? A temple. And obviously by 3 days, when you read that account, this is, let me get there so we can give everybody a reference for that.
While you're getting there, I'll never forget when I learned, because in your head, you picture, them selling, like you go to a flea market and they got Nikes and they're selling all this stuff, but they were actually selling corrupt stuff. Oh, you come for an offering, your dove? No, your dove has a, buy this one. They were trying to sell stuff for the temple, but they were just making a profit of all this stuff. They wanted
Well, it's not just that they were making. It is. You're right. You're absolutely right. They were making a profit off of this, but Caiaphas and Annas owned those shops. They ran those shops. So they're charging extra money, so for the convenience, right? It's a convenience store, So you don't. Instead of doing what and I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go back to the Torah. I don't want to say this as an absolute, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here, because the idea of bringing an offering was to bring your best. So I guess you could buy the best offering when you got there. I'm guessing somebody can check it out. Deuteronomy, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think the whole idea is you're supposed to bring the offering with you. Get the best. I get it. It would be a chore to bring a bull, an entire bull. But then again, that's what you were supposed to do, right? That was the whole thing.
That was the whole thing.
To make the effort to bring your best. but at any rate, what these guys did is for the convenience, they sold these things. You weren't
Hmm.
supposed to be doing that right outside, right on the grounds of the temple anyway, but they did.
Hmm.
But the real problem is these guys had their fingers in it.
Yep. Yeah. I
It
think it
was
was
it was a
Rico
shakedown.
Cortez. I think he years and years ago when I saw you said that through the literature he would read, they would do that. So you brought something, and when they inspect it, they go, "Oh no, this has a blemish.
Oh yeah,
You got to go buy this one over here." You
it's
know.
it's it's a shakedown.
Yep.
It's the classic mafia.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. No. You need our protection. You're
Hmm.
no. You got to buy it from us. You got to get your garbage picked up from our trucks.
Yeah.
Getting it picked up from those other trucks not going to work.
Hmm.
And so it was a shakedown.
Yep.
So there's that. So again, and then
So many different. Yeah.
you wonder why in the parable of Abraham's bosom, he says there was a rich man
Hmm.
dressed in purple.
Hmm.
Caius and Annas.
Yep.
That's that Ananias. That's who he's referring to.
Hmm.
And here's why they were rich. Here's part. And why were they so rich? Or what? Why were they even priests?
Yeah.
Because they paid Rome off.
Hmm.
They paid for their priesthood. These weren't sons of Aaron.
Nope.
The sons of Aaron hadn't been in the temple for 170, 180 years. The temple had gone so far south. And of course, so here's the text, everybody, so you guys can see it. So here's right after he turns over the tables, it says, verse 18, and the Yehudim answered and said to him, what sign do you show us since you are doing these? Now, again, by sign, normally, in the way we sort of think as Gentiles coming out of Gentile religion and trying to wrap our minds around Hebrew thought,
Hmm.
normally a sign he doesn't mean miracle, right? It's not a miracle because signs are what is in the heavens,
Hmm.
the sun, the moon, the stars. That's where the signs are. So I think what they're asking is, I think they asked the same question later on, right? I'm not sure if it's Mark. Maybe somebody could look this up for us. I don't know if it's Mark, and I think it's in Matthew as well. When they asked the master, "Show us a sign from heaven
Mm.
that you do these things," which is really the same question they're asking here in John chapter 2. Show us a sign from heaven that you do these things. And of course, the master says, no sign shall be given except the sign of the prophet Jonah. And of course, he goes through the story. And what's the story? He's dead 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And on the third day, he raises from the dead. But that's not a heavenly sign. That is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He's equating what he's going to do with the resurrection. But there's actually a sign of Jonah in the sky. And I'm not going to get into it today. We'll leave it at that. Whet everybody's appetite. We'll get into it. There is literally a sign of Jonah that appears only on the day of first fruits in the sky. Every year. Every year. And we'll leave it there.
There
What's
you
your
go.
appetite? You know, a little cliffhanger for everybody. We're getting there. We get to the calendar. We'll talk more about that. It's amazing. Amazing. So
Awesome.
they're asking him, show us a sign that you can do these things. Yeshua answered, said to them, destroy this dwelling place, and in 3 days I shall raise it up. So literally, what's the sign he just told them? The sign of the prophet Jonah.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a sign in the heavens to confirm this.
Wow.
And of course, it's in 3 days I shall raise it up. The Yehudim said it took 46 years to build this dwelling place, and you are going to raise it in 3 days. So in 3 days, what's Messiah going to do? Build the temple.
Mm-hmm.
What was the promise given to David? I'm going to send a son who is going to build my temple and establish your throne forever. And then, of course, it says he spoke about the dwelling place of his body. But even later on, what is this? Matthew, another really familiar point, or should be to all of us. Matthew 16. let's see. When Peter says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim,
Okay. Yep.
Simon Kiefer answering said to him, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. Let's keep that right there for a second, right? And where were we just? I'm going to go right back to 2 Samuel and chapter
7.
7. And what is it? I think it's
12
verse
and
12 is
16.
where we started. When your days are filled, you shall rest with your fathers, yada, yada. This coming one does build a house for my name, and I shall establish the throne of his reign forever. I am to be his father, and he is my son.
Mm-hmm.
So you jump back to what we're just reading in Matthew chapter 16. I know this might be making everybody dizzy that's watching because I'm zipping all over the place. But here's Matthew 16 again. And now this should make a little bit more sense to everybody. Who do people say that I am? He says, Shimon Kepha answering said, you are the Messiah, Son of the living Elohim. Well, what's the Messiah?
Yep.
The anointed King of Israel.
Yep.
You are the anointed King of Israel in the prophecy in 2 Samuel chapter 7 that you gave to David. That your throne would be established forever. And he said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in the heavens. And I say to you, you are Kepha, and on this rock, here it is, I will build a house. I don't know why that happens all the time, but I will build my assembly.
Mm-hmm.
The temple.
Yep.
We are the temple. So not only is he building his body up in 3 days, he's building us up, and on the third day,
yeah,
will raise us from the dead as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this building that he's building, this house that he's building, the gates of Sheol, of the grave, will not overcome it. Will not keep it down. Well, what's the gates of the grave? Well, what's Sheol? It's the grave.
Mm-hmm.
The grave's not going to, death is not going to, what's the only way this prophecy in 2 Samuel can be fulfilled? Resurrection.
Do you remember how many churches used to have that in their foyer? And it would say, the gates of hell should not prevail against, meaning like the church you would go to, and, that physical entity would never come against, the church, the building itself.
Think, and it's sad. It breaks my heart to think about that, because it's not what it means.
I know.
And it's not only not what it means, you miss the richness, the connections, the fullness. Because we say, so why is he called the Son? Because Father said that to David. This is somebody that's coming from your body. He's going to be a progenitor of you. And I'm going to call him, I'm going to be his father, and I'm going to call him my son. And he's going to build a house. Yes, Solomon does it, but he was talking about Messiah. You miss that connection.
Yep.
You don't get that. And then what happens is then we go off on the tangent of, because he tells him, I'll give you the keys. Here it is. The very next verse is, and I shall give you the keys of the reign of the heavens, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth having been loosed in the heavens. And people do exactly what you just referred to with this idea of binding and loosening, thinking that he says the gates of hell will not prevail. Well, if we think of hell in a Gentile way, in a pagan way.
Yeah.
Hell in a pagan way is this, place of demons and
demonic
and monsters
entities.
and demonic entities. Well, he's not talking about hell. He's talking about Sheol. He's talking about death.
Yep.
And so what comes out of this pagan view of hell, this Greek concept of hell, not the Hebrew concept of Sheol, is, well, the keys to the kingdom is that I can bind Satan. And I can bind demons, and I can loose demons, and I can, or loose this and bind that. And all he's telling them is, I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom. I'm going to give you the understanding to unlock the truths of the kingdom. And
Yep.
the truths that are true are already true in heaven. Come against that on the earth. People say stuff that's different. You bind that on the earth. Because it's already bound in heaven. It's untrue. You bind that. You speak against that. You've unlocked the truth. You see something. Simon he got unlocked. He got unlocked, and he saw the connection between Samuel and what Samuel is, what 2 Samuel is saying to David, or what Abba was saying to David in 2 Samuel, and this question of who am I? Who are you? You're the son of David.
Yep. I poked you. You got your preach on. You're getting your.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is
no,
deep.
it's good. It's good. It is.
This is deep.
But it's important to see the misconceptions that we've had, and understanding.
And it's sad, but the misconceptions, they're not just misconceptions. I know it sounds offensive. They're lies. They're lies, and they hide the truth from us. And so we're whittling away in darkness, trying to figure out things, and we don't know the truth. So I mean, just to use your example, I know we did it. And from all the religious background we've had, we did the whole binding and loosening of demons, didn't we?
Yep.
We saw that. We prayed over people for binding and loosening of things. And think about all the while that we are doing it. It had absolutely nothing at all to do with the truth of this verse.
That's right.
A little leaven leavens the whole lump. I guess that's part of the stuff that once we do sort of understand something, it's you repent.
Yeah.
I repent, man. I repented. Cried bitterly for the embarrassed over the things that we did and said, but we didn't know.
Yeah,
we didn't know.
Yep.
All right, so
Good point.
That's one. That's a big one. So you got to think a little bit. You got to put some things together. But is 2 Samuel the promise to David about resurrection? There's and every time we read it here, because if the gates of hell can't prevail, gates of hell. See, it's just ingrained in us. You can't King James version. Get it out.
Yeah, it's like in December when you go to the store, you start singing those stupid songs. Like, what the heck? Right?
Oh, wait, what's that? I used to love the Mariah Carey album.
Oh,
I gotta tell you, man, I loved her Christmas album.
So you hear that?
I don't want a lot for Christmas. No, I don't want anything for Christmas.
Yeah, right.
But listen, you want to get me some? I'm not going to say no.
Just a couple of weeks after.
I'm just not going to get you anything else in return.
Yeah, right. That's funny.
I'll take a gift card. But so does this verse have to do it? So does this have to do? The only way this happens is through resurrection, and it's and the building of the house is in resurrection. So if he raises up his house on the third day, he's going to raise up our house on the third day. That's us, right? That's that we are the temple. We are the third temple being built right now. The third temple everybody talks about in Ezekiel, it's being built right now. Messiah is building it right now. He is the master builder, the foundation and the master builder of the temple, and it's his. It belongs to him, and he will sit on his father's throne. He'll sit on the side of Abba's throne, but he'll sit on his father's throne, meaning David. He'll sit on David's throne forever. He is king forever.
Yep.
What a great concept, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, that took up almost all the time. Let's go over a couple of these quick. Another one of resurrection. An obvious one. I mean, we've gone over this one a gazillion times. Story of Abraham.
Yep.
I
True.
mean, you don't even, and I think it's kind of like Isaiah 53, that a lot of our Jewish brethren just absolutely avoid.
Yeah.
Because
like most of the book of Isaiah.
Most of the, definitely. I mean, the whole book of Isaiah is the gospel, but be that aside, very, very often, in fact, in some schools of Judaism, it's forbidden to read Isaiah 53. Why? Because you read Isaiah 53 and it sounds like Messiah from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It's the story of the death and the resurrection.
Do you remember
right there.
Zeph Porath, was it? Or the remember the rabbi, the Messianic rabbi?
What was his name?
And he would go to Zeph was his first name, the bald
Zeph?
guy.
Yeah.
And he would go to the Wailing Wall, and he would, with this, one of the students and their rabbi, they had to get permission, and he would read them, Isaiah 53 or some of the Psalms, and they're like, who does that sound like? And right away, really low, they're like, Yeshua? He's like, yeah.
That sounds like Yeshua. I know.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to, poke fun, but it is kind of funny. It is a little humorous.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, story of Abraham, and I know it's not avoided. I know they do read it. I'm not saying that they do it like Isaiah 53, but come on. Yeah. You can't read the story of Abraham, even if you have the most immature eyes to see, even if you are the most babe in Elohim that there can be. Mm-hmm. You read the story of Abraham, and it says, take your son, your promised son. Yeah. I know in the King James, it says only begotten.
Begotten, yeah.
It means promised. Take your own. See, because, again, Isaac is not the only son. Mm-hmm. Ishmael is a son.
Yep.
Messiah is not the only son. Mm-hmm. Adam was the first son. Mm-hmm. But
promised.
What Isaac was the son that was promised. Mm-hmm. So when it says take your only begotten, it doesn't mean your only son. Mm-hmm. It says take your only promised son and bring him where? To Mount Moriah to offer him up. Yep. How can you not connect that? In fact, the reason why John says it, the Master says that in John 3, that Elohim loved the whole world. He gave his only promised son. So that we do what? So that the readers, the Jews who are reading John, Yochanan in the first century, read that, and what are they supposed to do? Remember Abraham.
Yep.
It's the story of Abraham, which is a death and a resurrection. And on what day? On the third day. Mm-hmm. Because from the time he tells them to go, it tells us they went 3 days' journey. Yep. On the third day, Isaac comes up from the altar, a type of resurrection.
Yep. I'm about to say, yeah.
So, come on.
If you're gonna read the whole story of Abraham, you gotta read it in Jubilees, man. Isn't that amazing? Have you read the whole story of Abraham? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And I know we said this before. Read it in the Tanakh.
Yep.
And in the Torah first, multiple times. But
make
definitely
sure it passes the test. Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you read it in Jubilees or anything, make sure it passes the sniff test. But it does pass the sniff test, at least by my standard. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the details so much more.
Yeah.
So much more. Jonah, obviously, we already mentioned that in talking about the story of Messiah and the sign in the heaven. Mm-hmm. Jonah, right? 3 days that's the thing, that's the pattern. 3 days dead. And I know I've heard all sorts of different things. Jonah was alive for 3 days, and come on, man, come on. Let's just say, for argument's sake, a blue whale. You're on your canoe, and it's not like this hasn't happened before.
Yeah.
You're on your canoe. And you're above a school of, I don't know, whatever kind of fish it is.
Krill or something.
Krill or whatever. This blue whale sucks you into its gut. Well, you may not die for like the first minute and a half. Mm-hmm. But after that, you're done.
I don't even think you'd want to be alive. Oh my goodness, right? Can you imagine?
Well, let's just say you were in a scuba gear and you had a scuba tank, right? And you had oxygen. And you happen to make it down the gullet if its teeth didn't shred you, because they have teeth. Mm-hmm. If its teeth, if it's the inside of its mouth, if its jaw doesn't come down on you and crush you, and you make it into the belly of the whale, do you know what those stomach acids are going to do to you?
Oh yeah.
To the rubber suit that you're wearing, to the metal that you have on.
Yeah, like I said, moments.
Again, if you happen to survive that long, you're going to wish you were dead.
No air. I mean, nothing. It was he was gone.
You're gone. He was dead. Now when it says he prayed from the belly of the whale, sure he did. As he was going down the gullet, I'd have been praying too.
Yeah.
I'd have been screaming my head off, Abba, save me, save me, save me. Mm-hmm. But he's dead.
It's like, why did they tell him it was me? They threw him overboard.
That was him. That was his own doing.
Yep.
But 3 days later, he spit up on the shot. Now, if you happen to be in a whale 3 days later, you'd be pooped out the back of the whale.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same thing.
Yeah.
Not the same thing.
Yeah, that was the miracle there, that he was able to, that. But like you said, it was a type of resurrection.
It was a type of resurrection. And there's so many more, but we are out of time. It's already 8:30.
Yeah.
But that was a good one, man. I like that.
Yeah, we had to be,
one.
we didn't want to go too deep because then it would just be leaving too many rabbit, right? So there's tons of scripture.
So everybody knows, we didn't practice this beforehand.
No.
He told me what scripture he's going to use, but this is just we're just two guys having a conversation.
I just got here, right? I had Josiah's practice, ended at 6, got home, we came online. Yep.
But isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
All the connections you can make, and it's not that we claim to be anything,
mm-hmm.
but I'm telling you, once your eyes are open to it,
amen,
it's hard not to see it everywhere. Then
mm-hmm.
it's impossible.
Yep.
You start reading things like, oh my goodness, this is what he's talking about.
Yep. And that's why I agree with you 100%. Before you start going into Jubilees, Enoch, read, know Yah's word, because when you do read it, that's where you're going to get the, that's that. That's Isaiah.
Yes.
Oh, that's Ezekiel. Oh, that's this. That's that,
Yep. Yep. And then you can start making connections, and the story starts to come into view. And again, this is a story, everybody. This is a story. We have to understand this. We have to understand this as a story, because that's how it's given to us. That's the type of people we need. The story. The story is important. All right. That was neat, brother.
Yeah, good conversation, man.
Yeah, that was fun.
We had a good time. Fun. Looking forward to tomorrow. Actually, I'm gonna have to catch you late, but looking forward to tomorrow. Any
tomorrow
insight?
We're going to talk about the sower and the seed.
Mm-hmm.
But again, just like we talked about the 3 measures of meal last week,
mm-hmm.
from a very, very different perspective than we'll get from the modern religious world. We're going to talk about the sower and the seed from a very different perspective than we get from the modern religious world. And what those words really mean. What does it mean that the birds take the seed? What does it mean? What does it actually mean? What is he telling us about the word, about the seed?
Yeah.
What is fruit? Because everybody will quote Galatians 5, right? The joy, the fruit of the Spirit is, I forgot all the different fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, yada yada yada. Well, what are those? What does that mean? You got to understand what it means.
Mm-hmm.
It's not church joy. It's not religious joy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not spiritual joy. It's something very, very different. But we'll talk about that more tomorrow. And
if you give me the last word, I just want to let everyone know, keep PD and his family in prayer. I know everyone always goes to pastor, pray for this, and I know you do. But I just want to let everyone know that, that loves you out there, to keep you and Karen and your family in prayer, that Yah puts his covering over you guys. You guys are doing a lot of stuff, and just for health, everything. Keep you going, and keep that that wisdom download that Yah gives you coming all the time. We appreciate you, and we love you, buddy.
Thank you, man.
So
I appreciate
just keep you in prayer. Love you, man.
Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Shabbat shalom, man.
Love you, brother. Peace.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. I hope that you guys enjoyed that conversation. Please don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, hit the bell. If you like the conversation, give us a thumbs up. Please give us a thumbs up and send it out to somebody else in faith that wants just to, have a conversation, listen to a conversation, think about it, think about these things, go over the scriptures, look at them. Again, we invite you to join us tomorrow morning at 10:45 for our morning message, our Shabbat morning message. We look forward to it. It's going to be a good one. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great one, guys. Yah bless. Shalom.